The case of O.J. Simpson is not just one of the most famous criminal trials in American history. It is a psychological study of fame, identity, narcissism, domestic violence, racial tension, media influence, and the limits of the legal system itself. To understand why this case still fascinates psychologists, criminologists, and legal scholars decades later, we must go beyond the verdict and examine the human behavior at its core. O.J. Simpson was not an ordinary suspect. He was a celebrated NFL athlete, a media personality, a commercial icon, and for many Americans, a symbol of success and assimilation. This public image played a crucial psychological role throughout the investigation and the trial. From a psychological standpoint, individuals who experience extreme fame often develop a distorted sense of self. Repeated reinforcement, public admiration, and lack of accountability can foster narcissistic traits, emotional entitlement, and difficulty regulating anger or rejection. Fame does not create these traits, but it can amplify them. Nicole Brown Simpson's relationship with O.J. was marked by repeated incidents of domestic violence. Police reports, emergency calls, and witness testimony documented a clear pattern. In forensic psychology, this pattern is critical. Domestic violence is rarely impulsive in isolation. It is often cyclical, escalating, and rooted in control rather than emotion. Jealousy, possessiveness, and fear of abandonment are common psychological drivers in intimate partner violence. When the abuser's identity is deeply tied to dominance, rejection can feel like annihilation of the self. This is particularly relevant in personalities with narcissistic or borderline features. On the night of June 12, 1994, Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman were brutally murdered. The crime scene was exceptionally violent, indicating what psychologists describe as overkill. Overkill often suggests a highly personal crime, driven by rage rather than strategic intent. From a behavioral analysis perspective, the level of violence exceeded what would be necessary to incapacitate the victims. This suggests emotional flooding, a state in which rational cognition collapses under overwhelming emotion. In such states, individuals act compulsively, not strategically. Shortly after the murders, Simpson's behavior raised immediate red flags. He failed to turn himself in, instead leading police on a nationally televised low-speed chase in a white Ford Bronco. This moment became a defining psychological event. Flight behavior is complex. While innocent individuals may panic, this particular act carried symbolic weight. Simpson was not running from police in secrecy. He was performing avoidance in front of the entire nation. Psychologically, this suggests a conflict between guilt and identity preservation. Inside the Bronco, Simpson reportedly held a gun and a photograph of Nicole. This combination, weapon, memory object, and suicidal ideation, is consistent with acute psychological crisis. It reflects cognitive dissonance, the collapse of the public hero identity under the weight of irreversible consequences. The trial itself exposed a different psychological dynamic, that of the jury and the courtroom environment. The defense strategy did not rely solely on factual innocence. Instead, it reframed the narrative around systemic racism, police misconduct, and historical injustice. This approach was psychologically effective. Jurors are not purely logical processors. They are emotional and contextual decision makers. By shifting the frame from "did he do it" to "can the system be trusted," the defense introduced reasonable doubt not only about evidence, but about authority itself. The prosecution made several critical psychological errors. They underestimated the power of narrative and overestimated the persuasive force of forensic evidence alone. When Simpson tried on the gloves in court and they appeared not to fit, the visual impact overshadowed complex scientific explanations. Cognitive psychology shows that jurors heavily favor concrete visual experiences over abstract reasoning. The glove demonstration created a memorable heuristic, a mental shortcut, that undermined months of technical testimony. From a forensic standpoint, the evidence was substantial: DNA, blood traces, fibers, and opportunity. But evidence does not exist in a vacuum. It must be interpreted through trust. Once trust in law enforcement was compromised, every piece of evidence became suspect. The verdict, not guilty, shocked much of the world. Psychologically, reactions to the verdict split along racial and cultural lines. This divergence itself became a case study in collective identity and social psychology. For some, the verdict symbolized justice denied to victims. For others, it represented a rare moment of accountability for a system historically biased against minorities. Both interpretations coexist, demonstrating how legal outcomes can serve as emotional symbols beyond factual determination. Years later, in a civil trial, Simpson was found liable for the wrongful deaths and ordered to pay substantial damages. The lower burden of proof revealed what the criminal trial could not conclusively establish. Psychologically, this dual outcome reinforces an important distinction. Legal innocence is not the same as factual innocence. The mind seeks closure, but the law operates within procedural constraints. Simpson's later behavior further complicates his psychological profile. His conviction years later for armed robbery and kidnapping reflects persistent issues with impulse control, entitlement, and risk assessment. Individuals who believe they are above consequences often engage in increasingly reckless behavior over time. This is known as escalation through perceived invulnerability, a phenomenon frequently observed in high-profile offenders. The O.J. Simpson case ultimately serves as a mirror. It reflects not only the psychology of one man, but the psychology of society. Our fascination with celebrity, our discomfort with domestic violence, our mistrust of institutions, and our need for clear villains and heroes. From a legal psychology perspective, the case demonstrates that trials are not truth machines. They are adversarial performances governed by rules, persuasion, and human bias. Forensic psychology teaches us that understanding crime requires more than evidence. It requires understanding personality, relationships, emotional triggers, and social context. Decades later, the question, "Did O.J. Simpson do it?" remains less important than what the case reveals about how we judge, believe, and decide. Because in the end, the most unsettling truth is not that the system failed once, but that it worked exactly as human psychology allows it to work. If you're interested in understanding why people commit extreme acts, how psychology shapes criminal behavior, and how the justice system is influenced by perception, bias, and human emotion, then this is the right place for you. On Mind Evidence, we explore the psychological forces behind real criminal cases, forensic analysis, and the hidden mechanisms of the human mind, without sensationalism and beyond surface-level true crime. If you found this analysis insightful, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and stay with us for upcoming videos where psychology, law, and human behavior intersect in the most disturbing and fascinating ways. Because understanding the mind is the first step to understanding the truth.